Alright everyone, we start off today talking about like the kids at drag shows, kids at strip clubs thing. In some cases it appears that parents were hiring drag queens for like birthday parties. There's several images of that are circulating. It goes without saying that I find that objectionable and think that it should be unlawful. And yes, that is, by the way, for all the people out there that have bizarre stereotypical conceptions of libertarianism. It is a libertarian position. People who are that young, it violates the NAP to expose them to sexual things because they're not mentally aware enough to consent to things. It'd be similar to someone who is mentally quite on the slow side, animals, etc. Cognition does, intelligence does play a factor in libertarianism. I'd say it plays a role in it much more than in many other ideologies. Anyway, I will say one thing first and foremost. Oftentimes we get bogged down in looking at the darkest and most appalling elements of what happens in society. So the fact that gun crime, for example, is rare in the United States outside of a few blighted urban zones. Most of the so-called mass shootings that happen are gang drive-bys and so forth. It doesn't really impact, to a great extent, most communities in the U.S. But anytime there is a significant shooting, partially because of self-serving political groups, politicians, sleazy legacy media types, there's a hyper-focus by people on the left on guns and them being evil, and oh my god, everyone's getting shot, and my child is not safe anymore, so you have to give up the AR-15, even though this last shooting was done with some other sort of weapon, because it looks scary, and Biden tells me so. I see the same thing with this. The average parent is not going to take their kids to Drag Queen Story Hour. This is, in most cases, a fringe element. It's a fringe element as well associated loosely with the LGBT thing. Having multiple contacts with people who are gay, bisexual, whatever, I haven't met a single one of them that's in favor of this happening. These are not the sort of people who, because they are insane, they go out with a suit made entirely of stitched-together dildos and start rambling to anyone who doesn't want to listen about their sexuality. The average person is not psychologically messed up enough so that they have to make that the entire focus of their existence. It's really no different than someone who is obsessed with race. Well, I'm black and I'm proud, and here's my manifesto on blackness. I'm white and I'm proud, hail the ethno-state, same thing. Most people are part of an identity, perceived or real. It can be an artificial category, but that does not compel them to think that this is correct. I'm seeing people that are arguably cringe leftoids rejecting this. So don't think that this is a mainstream sort of thing. It is something, however, that needs to be tackled. No, kids should not be going to drag shows, etc. Drag especially. It's explicitly sexual. In fact, the whole point is a hypersexualization. It's dudes dressed as women hypersexualizing the female archetype. It's basically a crude form of humor. Humor and or, in some cases, an actual sexual kink, a fetish. Children don't need to be involved in that, and I'm wondering under what premise would children even be physically able to be brought into a strip club? Apparently, depending on the alcohol policy on that particular night, I guess they're only serving Shirley Temples to the young'uns. I guess that in some areas this is legal. Well, it's a strip club. Like, yeah, bring a blacklight in there and do a cum search and see what you see. I think that it wouldn't be a pretty sight. I mean, I would investigate these parents because obviously there is something psychologically wrong with them if they're participating in this. If they're bringing like Drag Queen Dan home for their kid's 12th birthday party, that's just weird. And I saw someone trying to defend, like kids at drag shows and something, actually earlier on Twitter. And it gave me real fits. It gave me a real big laugh. They posted a picture of a couple of young boys at Hooters. And of course, Hooters, what is it known for? They deliberately hire waitresses, wait staff. They're all female. They have large breasts. I don't know what the cutoff is. And they wear like the low-cut shirt and stuff and so forth. That's the whole point. The whole point of Hooters, you're not going there for the food. It's for that kind of sleazy, cheesy atmosphere. It's just a little bit, it's perverted, ultimately. The only slight apples to oranges is that generally speaking in a Hooters, you're not tipping the waitress by stuffing the $10 bill down their shirt or something like that. It's definitely sexualized, but it's much more on the innuendo side. That being said, I'm not going to defend bringing children to Hooters either. I think parents that do that are just as crazy. It's one thing, your son graduates high school and you're just a weirdo or something. Okay, well, it's a little bit different. When I see little kids, these boys in that picture, I think may have been 10, maybe 11 or something, a little bit younger or older, somewhere in that range. The average person, I say this as someone who's maybe not fully mentally normal, but someone who is generally sane. The average person reacts to that by saying those are stupid parents. Why are they bringing their kids to Hooters? It's like bringing your kid into the casino or something. I would extend it further though. What about child beauty pageants? Effectively a slave labor for 4 and 5-year-olds who want to put on a tiara. I think that that's weird too. The drag side of having kids going in drag, like that Desmond kid, and was twerking, and grown men were stuffing money into the panties and stuff. Why are these parents not being looked into at some point? As a society, we need to address that. No, it should not be legal to do that to children. And it's being done to them. To be clear, the children here are blameless. It's the parents' fault. It's not even the fault of cringe fringe craptivists on the fringe of the LGBTQ thing. It's the parents' fault. They're the ones that are greenlighting the participation. They're the ones that are feeding their kids poison intellectually. It's the parents' fault. It's the parents that allow or coerce their kids into being into this sort of thing, number one. It's also the other parents who think that activism is they show up every 2 years to ink a piece of paper at the ballot box. They ignore problems like this until they become cultural issues at convenient moments, usually around elections, and then they don't participate in anything further civically. They don't organize with other parents. It's like with critical race theory. All of a sudden, parents woke up one day and realized that pseudo-Marxism was being taught in schools. A deeply racist curriculum filled with revisionist Marxist swill was being peddled, but it had been there for years. But they didn't go to the school board meetings. All of a sudden, they started doing that. They didn't go to vote for who was going to be on the school board. They didn't go to the school board meetings. They didn't look at little Jimmy and Sally's homework. There were sporadic reports, well, this math problem here is phrased in an awfully racially tinted manner. It's about how many slaves you can fit aboard the slave ship or something like that, and you have to do long division. There were cases of that, but we realized it was 10 times more prevalent. This has been an issue now for years. Initially, I would point this out. It was the same 4chan that Richard Spencer wants to ban that was harping on this sort of thing years ago in the first place, ridiculing it, panning it widely. Now all of a sudden, every Johnny-come-lately conservative commentator has a big problem with it. Some of us realized the encroaching problem half a decade ago. I fondly remember making a video about the transgendered bathroom access thing and locker rooms and so forth, of course. There were going to be people who they're not gay, they're not actually trans at all, who are going to say, hey, but I can say that I am and I can go into the girls' locker room. Man, this is going to be great. I can't wait to go to the swimming pool tomorrow and the next day and every day after that. They'll have to do a cum search in the locker room as well at some point. Kids should not be exposed to such things. If an adult wants to cross-dress, they want the stripper to jump out of the cake at an idiot-ass bachelor's party, which is basically cheating on your spouse-to-be, and I don't understand the practice. If they want to jiggle their balls around in their own home with 5 gay men and a conga line or something, who cares? They're adults. What happens in the bedroom is no business of anyone else's. I will point out that they often try to make it others' business by constantly talking about it. The other thing that I would like to point out is that the craptivistic side of the so-called spectrum of LGBTQ plus a IOU, whatever it is now, they cannot separate sexualization of kids from the concept of gay activism. They are conjoining the two together. I have a feeling some of these people probably have anonymous minor attracted person blog posts or something out there. They seem incapable of differentiating between the two. So the insinuation is that one cannot be gay and proud unless they want little kids to be sexualized. Again, I think that the average gay or lesbian person finds that deeply offensive. What would be great is if more of them were to speak out against it, because they'd be the most powerful voices to actually take down this crap. That's about all. Peace out.